12 o'clock. I want to call the meeting to order if I can. And if we could start with a roll call, that would be
Mr. Egan?
here.
Lasky? Here. Mr. Jeff Downs?
Here.
Mr. Becker?
Here.
Ms. Goodman? Mr. Adam Downs?
Present.
Manistee?
Okay, got an agenda last week. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'd make a motion to approve it.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. All right, public comment. We have a couple of folks here. Let's.
Yeah, good. I'll just say good morning. I don't have anything of substance to say. Just happy to smell the jet fuel in the air.
And could you introduce yourself to
Oh yeah,
everyone else?
sorry. I'm Dylan Walker, live in Manistee Township. I do currently have an application in for appointment to this board authority. So, thanks for having me.
My name is Devin. I'm the station manager here for Contour Airlines at the airport. I just thought I'd poke my head in and say hi to everyone, introduce myself. I just started here on the 1st, so I'm relatively new to the position. We're still figuring things out here, but so far so good. Everything the last couple of days been doing better.
Yeah, we met a couple of days ago. I came in that day or so that you started and went in and introduced myself, and we talked for a minute. And I was going to say hello a couple of days ago, but you were out on a big machine de-icing a plane.
Yeah.
So I figured that wasn't the time for somebody to walk up and say, "Hey, how you doing?"
I get away from the outside. I'll
Yeah.
that way back.
All right.
What is your last name and?
Cruz, C-R-U-Z.
What's your title?
I'm the station manager.
Thank you.
All right. And that takes it.
I'm just going to add, I am extending the praises of Devin everywhere I can. Anyone that will listen, he is an amazingly hard worker. He's been here, he's probably put in 80 hours the last week.
Probably.
He is the type of employee that Contour needs to make this successful, and I just really thank you for all the work. And you've been dealt a heavy blow the last week.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
I'm going to be on one of your planes tomorrow morning.
Oh, okay.
Is it looking okay? Okay.
All right. I can attest the weather. I've been here several times of Devin's attentiveness and premium on customer service, so thank you.
I know it's hard sometimes not knowing things, especially with, weather and maintenance and other issues that are going on. So I try to communicate as best I can. Not always it's good.
All right, thank you for being here, both of you. And you're certainly welcome to stay or whatever you're, don't feel trapped.
Okay.
But don't feel like you have to. Wide open.
Okay. I'll be on the airplane. You guys.
Okay.
Thanks for stopping in.
See you. All right, so that takes us right to meet and hunt. We have a presentation on the expansion projects, and so I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie.
Hi, good morning. Barry, would you mind can you give me permission to share?
Let you do that.
Is Karen, what was it? Starting with, is this what Karen wanted to see?
I didn't see the full message. I think potentially if we were going to talk about the comment, I thought it was going to be the
All right.
urban issue.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. I'll try to make it a little bigger for all of us.
Yep.
Great. Well, good morning. And I also have on the call with me this morning Luke Hutchins and Stephanie Green, who are part of our Meet and Hunt team. And I didn't check, is Andrew on as well? He might be.
Andrew is on, Steph.
Okay, great. Thank you. So what we wanted to review with you just briefly this morning was several of the projects that are underway and one that we're hoping to get underway, but there's some changes. And so this is kind of a educational element too of sharing some new information. So first and foremost, your hangar door project is one of the projects that we're looking to get underway. And so Barry, I guess that's a question for you of status of the sponsor contract, if you've gotten that back from MDOT yet.
I have not, that is still in my court with MDOT, so.
Okay. Okay, all right. I don't believe that is expiring money, but we probably want to move that along as quickly as possible, just because we'll, if we end up here towards the end of January, beginning of February, too closely to that February 28th date, we'll probably have a challenge of getting that approved, because they're gonna be fully focused on all the expiring bill grants. So, anything that we can do to try to get that accomplished here in January would probably be advantageous. Same thing, I guess, with the runway object-free area grants. Just was looking for an update on that. I know there's 3 grants related to that. So the sponsor contract, which is the grant with MDOT, the meet and hunt contract, and then the contractor contract. Just wanted to make sure that you had all of those as well.
I have not heard anything from MDOT on that, which surprised me a little bit, because that was now approved almost a month ago, or about a month ago at the November meeting. I do have the contractor contract that I've been holding,
Okay.
until the funding mechanisms are there.
Sure.
So, yeah, I
Okay.
need to follow up with MDOT and find out where that is.
Okay. Yeah, if we could, that would be great. I know that, Paige is unfortunately fairly non-responsive, which makes it challenging. We're not seeing anything in Aero PM that would indicate that it's been moved along. So that's why we wanted to follow up to see if that was your understanding as well.
Yep, okay.
Okay. All right. So we'll want to circle back on those. So those are, I won't put them in the bad news categories. They're just, languishing a little bit. The good news is that with the federal reauthorization that took place here in 2024, there's a change in funding formulas that is going to significantly impact Manistee. You can see on the screen, what you've historically gotten under the Airport Improvement Program or the AIP program. You've fallen under what we call non-primary entitlements of only getting $150,000 a year. With the new legislation, it would appear that you're likely to obtain closer to $700,000 in entitlements instead of the 150. There's new, like I said, new formulas that are looking back retroactively at your enplanements. So this number hasn't been officially published yet. This is just the calculation that Barry did, and we cross-referenced it and agreed with them. So that could be a game changer for us. Now, keeping in mind, those dollars have to be used for basically capital improvement projects. So those aren't anything that we could apply towards operations or maintenance, but they certainly could be applied towards the terminal building, towards runway projects, et cetera. So that'll be good. FAA has not issued those numbers yet in 24. We aren't technically in fiscal year 25 yet. So we expect to hopefully see those numbers verified and published officially sometime here after the first of the year. So,
But those Stephanie, those can be viewed as basically general fund dollars for that line items, if you will. So whatever we need to do here, capital outlay, it can be spent on that. We don't have to have the 2.5% match.
No, it would have to have the match. So this is like your traditional AIP funding. So these will be towards capital improvement projects only, and would have to have the 2.5% match.
So
Or
for the
5%.
696,000, we gotta cough up to 2.5 then.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Only 20,000.
No, that's fine. We need to know that.
Yep, nope, there, exactly. And your current CIP that we approved back in November did not contemplate having this additional funding. So we have not revised your CIP yet because we wanted, I didn't want to jinx it, to tell you the truth.
Oh, that's fine.
Somebody says otherwise. So as soon as we get that verification, then we will go back and revise your CIP to identify what does that look like.
Good problem to have.
Exactly.
Could you give an update on where FAA funding for fiscal year 25 stands? Because I suspect the reason we haven't heard anything official is that whole funding process is, as it typically is, up in the air right now.
Yeah, we're under still continuing resolutions, so we expect that'll continue until we get well into, probably first quarter of calendar year 25, once the new administration takes office. And so once that happens, then we would hope that that will get some momentum and get resolved so that we can move forward. When we've been under continuing resolutions previously, sometimes they can last first quarter, second quarter, sometimes even into the third quarter before we get the funds released. So we're hopeful that it'll be early first quarter, but it could be later.
I mean, we run the, I don't say risk, but even though this is what we, per new law, we're entitled to, it could be nearly the end of the fiscal year before it even becomes available, which
Correct.
is a different set of issues.
Yeah, I mean, it could not arrive until, September 30th, theoretically. And so I guess the other thing to keep in mind is, so that formula is what is technically authorized under the legislation, but then it has to be appropriated. So they could theoretically appropriate something lower than these calculated formulas. So like I said, that's why we haven't gone too crazy recalculating or rebalancing anything until we know what number we're actually working with. It's pretty typical that, there's a authorization number, but then there's the actual appropriation number, and often they don't agree. The upside is it certainly is going to be something above 150,000, which is great for us, that we'll have additional dollars to work with. Moving forward, there's a current grant that is out that we wanted to draw your attention to, and we think it has some potential merit as it relates to the terminal building project. So MDOT still has some funding that's coming into them that's part of the bipartisan infrastructure law bill, that they're getting some funding that they have dedicated towards an air service grant. And so there's different pots of money and different programs that you can submit for. And so we're thinking, and I've included a copy of the application to Barry. I'm not sure if he shared or not, but the point being, it's out there. I did pose the question to Brian Buds, the director of MDOT's Office of Aeronautics, of would you consider, if Manistee were to submit a request for some of those funds to fund your terminal planning study, is that something that you think would be appropriate? And he said they weren't adverse to the idea of submitting. So our recommendation is that we do consider submitting for that grant to cover your terminal planning study. The challenges with that is that you can see on the screen, the application isn't due until February, which is good. That gives us time to put together a solid application. The downside is that is a project that they don't want you working ahead of. And so the calendar or the schedule that they've included in the grant application is that the project could not begin until May of 25. And we'll talk here in a minute. I'm going to show you the schedule as it relates to the terminal expansion project. That could cause us some challenges because not starting until May gives us a very tiny window of actually accomplishing what we need to be in a position to submit for a different grant that we would hopefully compete with for the actual terminal expansion. So it's a potential funding mechanism to save you some dollars. The downside with it is it could potentially be detrimental to us pursuing other dollars.
Stephanie, if we were to pursue applying for that, as you and I have talked, I've got a different plan for an application for that, which I was going to get into later in my report.
Sure.
And we don't succeed, would we know reasonably soon after February 7th so that we don't wait until May and then still not have those dollars?
That's a great question, Barry. I mean, I think that's a question that we could pose, in the next 30 days to Brian and ask him that question of what's their timeline for confirmation so that we could know where you sit. And I don't think there's anything that precludes you from not submitting two proposals. What they've asked for, I know on the other GA application, was to be sure that you prioritize which one in case they, are in a position where they can't honor both of them. So I think that
Hey,
would be
Steph?
the other question. Yeah, go ahead.
If I can just interject real quick. There was a call that I was on about this funding with the state, and they did indicate that they were going to award these grants by the end of February,
Okay, good.
or at least acknowledge who was getting what.
Okay,
So,
great. Thanks, Steph.
yep.
Okay, so I guess that saves us a phone call. So again, we're not making a recommendation one way or the other, just wanted to make sure that we put it on the table. And, Barry, as you said, you and I talked about a different proposal you have potentially for using those funds, which I also think is a good idea. So, so we're going to jump to the next graphic here in a minute, but I thought I could just tie up real quickly, the next major project that we have in front of you from a project that isn't either under contract or soon to be under contract is the terminal expansion. And the first element with that is our terminal planning study. And that has taken a few twists and turns. I'm going to let Steph talk about it here in a minute when we go to the next slide in terms of how it's expanded. And unfortunately, this is a byproduct of FAA, getting involved in the process that is complicating the project a little bit. So there's a specific study that we have to do. You'll see here in the timeline in a moment what that looks like. And the whole goal, I think, is if we've talked previously, is we want to be in a position to be able to submit for the Airport Terminal Program or ATAP grant. The issue with that, though, is that we are being warned that we don't know if there will be that final year of it. The new administration may conclude the program with what was done here already in 25 and may not have a new program. So that's also something to be cautious of, that the industry as a whole is kind of sitting back to waiting to see if that final year of the bill funding will actually be dispersed or not. And then thinking about moving into the design and construction side of the house, current estimates that we're seeing with other projects that we're doing and bidding right now is looking at about $800 per square foot for different terminal building construction. So that's important to think about as we move forward into where we end up. I'm going to jump down to the next page to show you what some of that schedule looks like. We talked about this the last time I was over there in person about the project, and just wanted to bring everybody back up to speed on that now that we've moved into the new calendar year and new fiscal year. So as we mentioned, the study itself has to be conducted. So the sooner that we can get moving on that, the better. Right now, what we are proposing is that we would get a contract to you here yet in January. Stephanie has that just about prepared, and that would typically have to be paid locally at 100% and then seek reimbursement. And that's because FAA wants you to have skin in the game, and they're not willing to reimburse it until it's actually been justified. So unfortunately, the cost of that, because of everything that FAA is asking us to now include in that, has jumped to almost $80,000. So we know that's a considerable amount of dollars, which is exactly why our discussion was maybe we could wait for that air service grant and apply for that and see what happens. As you can see, looking at the, oh, go ahead.
If you could maybe slide your window over so we can see the notes.
Oh, yep, let me.
I want to make sure that we're all clear on what the reimbursable only if.
If the project proceeds.
And define proceed.
Well, that's a really good question. Usually it's within a window. There, of course, isn't a prescribed window. So our concern, and that's the reason for the conversation today before we get started in any single direction, is that you have to do the study regardless of being able to move forward to prove that you need the project. Assuming it is deemed to be necessary through the justification process, it will identify justified for how much You may go above that in terms of square footage that you're interested in building. And then how you proceed from there would then be a conversation we would have to have with the board. Obviously, is, what's laid out here is that we would be successful in obtaining the ATP grant. If that happens, then the schedule that we can go through here in a moment happens. If we're not successful in an ATP grant, or if the ATP program is ceased, then we would have to look at how are we going to fund that then with other AIP funds, which see the previous conversation that if we really are getting $600,000, it becomes easier for us to put together a project. However, we would have to use multiple years worth of dollars, or look for additional sources. And it's not often that 100% of the square footage is eligible. Therefore, usually local share is going to be more than that, 2.5% to 5%, depending on the funding mechanism we use. So that reimbursable only if the project proceeds is if we got into design where it's justified and you start down the design road, that would be a time that we could argue that it's justified and reimbursed. Often what will happen is those dollars don't actually come back to your account. Instead, what they're credited towards your local share of either the design or the construction. So they just, kind of stay in play in the project. It's not that a check usually comes back.
So, let me try to summarize. So, $80,000 that we have to pay upfront, that there is some risk that it would never be reimbursed if the project were not first justified based on the output of the study. And then if it was justified based on the output of the study, but we couldn't find a way to fund it, after 10 years, it probably wouldn't be any longer justified because they're so far apart that, so there are risks involved in this, and that's really what's important for this board to understand as we think about this in the context of everything else that's going on. Is that a fair summary?
That's a very good summary.
Does the board understand what that risk is, and in your years of experience, how many things like this have you seen where the local authority or board got screwed in this FAA process?
In 30 years in the business, I have not seen an airport not get reimbursed. It certainly is a question of to how much. So they may decide that the $80,000 justification study gets prorated relative to the amount of eligibility. So as an example, if we determine through that study that the square footage that's proposed to be constructed to meet your needs, and that, is what the airport authority wants compared to what the FAA says is justified. Let's say it's an 80-20 split. They may prorate that 80,000 at 80-20, and so you may pay a slightly higher share of that. I've seen some where they've paid it 100%, and then I've seen others where they've prorated it. So that would just be a caution that it might be prorated based upon the findings of the study.
So, my goal in this information is not to scare people, but to make sure that everyone understands there are some risks associated.
So is this risk related to the change of administration and the discussion around DOGE, or is it just a standard risk?
No, this is just a standard risk. FAA themselves looks at every project now through the lens of is it justified or not. Historically, these projects were eligible right up front for federal funding, but FAA felt they got burned too many times by an airport going through a study and then getting cold feet. So now they've said, well, airport, you've got to have skin in the game. So you need to go through the exercise of justifying what you want to do, and then we'll bless it. And once that happens, then it would be eligible for reimbursement. So that's, I guess, probably the past 5 years or better, it's been in this new format. It applies to these kind of building justifications. It applies to land acquisition, et cetera. So this isn't anything with the new administration guiding this. It's just a greater
Standard
intent to make
operating
sure it's
practice.
justified.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do we
So
have
which
any
is,
funds in budget for this, Barry? No, we didn't budget for it. Okay. And so it could come out of the 696 though? This would be an eligible expense that we could use? No. Okay,
That's the
so,
whole point.
well-
This is non-federal dollars.
so I guess then my question is where do we go find it?
The county.
Well, right. And so,
Well, and that's why there was discussion earlier from Stephanie about the state grant program that this could maybe slot into.
Mhm.
maybe in your report or a different day, it'd be kind of nice to see all the things like this that we didn't budget for, that we've got to go see the county for if there's others out there. This is the only one?
Yes,
Okay.
that's why Mead Nut is here, because this is outside of the realm of normal.
Or maintenance, or anything?
I mean, we had the conversation last month about unexpected maintenance issues, but I'm not gonna guarantee that nothing is gonna pop up that's unexpected.
Well, you can't.
That's why they call it
That's the contingency.
So, back to you, Stephanie.
okay. So with that in mind, so somewhere here in likely first quarter of 25, we were looking at moving forward with that. And you can see the next couple lines there with study kickoff or draft study. Before we contemplated trying to apply for that air service grant, we were on a track that, we expected we'd kick the study off by early March and be well into it, with the goal being getting to an FAA and MDOT concurrence by June or July, so that we would be in a good position when the notice of funding opportunity, or NOFO as the acronym is, opens for the ATP grant, assuming that's still in play. Because what we want to do is when we apply for that grant, we'd like to have as good a number as possible for what we're submitting, and have it backed by the fact that we could check the box to say, yes, it's been justified. Yes, we've got a decent cost estimate, and here's our ask. If we have to wait for that air service grant, and the deadline that they're showing in the app of not getting started and expending those funds until May, you can see that makes it a pretty turnaround that we probably would not have FAA or MDOT concurrence on that before we had to submit the NOFO. We would have to, answer the question of it's in progress. Not a great response, because we know that, there are airports all across the country that are gearing up for this last year of this program. So we do know that competition is going to be tough. And that's why we're concerned about, being able to check the box. Other airports who are competing, maybe in a position to be able to check the box to say, yes, it's justified, and yes, here's our program. And some are even going as far as being able to say, and yes, it's designed. At this point, we would be in a position, if we waited for the air service grant, to just say, well, we've studied it, but nobody's blessed it yet. So that is a bit of a concern for us. It's great that if we went after the air service grant, it would certainly reduce your dollars invested, but may not give us the strongest application pursuing the full project. So just again, piece of information that we wanted to share so that everybody kind of goes in eyes wide open.
And The only thing I would add on to that too, you want the strongest application, obviously, if competition is keen because of the last year of the program, correct?
Absolutely.
So the path forward is, you would prepare a contract, this board would consider it, and then we'd have to go to the county board for their blessing on funding, and have that all in place by February ideally?
Ideally, or at least by March 1st at the latest.
To Jeff's point about putting us in a strongest position, does February help you?
Every day that we get is better for us to be able to strengthen the argument and get it done sooner for you.
Okay.
And, you know, knowing that Stephanie has shared that on the call that they're looking to make the announcement by February, you know, we may be able to ask MDOT if there's a provision to allow us to pre-spend if you were to be successful. So maybe those all dovetail together at the same time. Because of this timing issue, you know, I think we could pose the question. The worst they can say is no, that we don't want you, you know, if you were successful in getting the air service grant to fund this, there's no harm in asking, can we start early and seek reimbursement with your funds so that we can meet these deadlines to be as competitive as possible? I would hope that they would say yes, so that, you know, we could compete with everybody else for those funds, but you know, that's not a decision that's in our purview to make. We'd have to ask.
I'm gonna go kind of big picture here and kind of, you know, if you listen through the details of what we've been talking about, it almost appears that, oh, there's funding available with this fill terminal program, and therefore we're jumping through hoops to put in an application to tap into some funding. I think the bigger picture is this building wasn't built anticipating the type of service we now have, the changes in TSA security models that have occurred over time, and there are inadequacies of this building, and it's those that are theoretically driving this.
Mhm.
That's what the study is kind of pulled together that. But I guess I have for the Mead and Hunt folks on the line, given what you know of our challenges, do you think we will compete well once the study documents those things? Or is maybe not the right time and, you know, we let this opportunity of funding pass and we look at the next opportunity and maybe we have a better case 2 years down the road? Given what you know about our needs, do you think ultimately there's a likelihood of us being successful or not? And I know that's a crystal ball question, but.
That's a great question, Barry. I mean, with it being the last year of the program, competition is going to be keen. You know, I can share with you that I know that there are at least 4, if not 5, just Mead and Hunt clients in the state of Michigan alone that I know are planning to submit for this. With the time frame that we're talking about, I should say, without the air service grant, so that if we can get to that June, July and have a good number, that's still only half of the story. Like I said, those that are even putting their money in and saying we're fully designed and ready to go are going to be probably better competing than where you would be with just the justification behind you. Doesn't mean I wouldn't recommend that you still submit, you know, and see what happens. But you know, it's that timing. Steph, if you want to maybe talk a little bit about the challenges that we've been seeing between, you know, CMX and Escanaba in terms of the forecasting study itself, I think that might be helpful to help set the stage that just the schedule that we've placed here, you know, could unfortunately be less than ideal because of what the ADO has been putting us through.
Sure, I'd be happy to speak to that a little bit. Um, it used to be that it was a pretty straightforward approach for a justification for a terminal expansion. We used to come to the table, and as long as we could tell the story that made sense, you know, for example, our, you know, terminal building was built to accommodate a plane with X number of seats. Now we have an RJ with X number of seats. There is no room. And you can show some pictures of overcrowding and various other things, and you run a normal forecast like you would when you do an ALP update or a master plan. That typically would be enough information, as long as the story made sense and you have proof that you actually have an airline flying there, and you know, it's pretty high level stuff. Unfortunately, in the past year, FAA has come back and said, okay, in addition to those things, we need you not only to do the forecast, tell us the story too, but now we need you to dive a little bit deeper into what the facility requirements are. So where exactly do you need space? How big does it need to be? And you need to prepare rough order of magnitude cost estimates for essentially preliminary design, even though you're technically not supposed to get into preliminary design at this phase of the planning report. Now they're asking for it, and that's become a new requirement. And that's why the fee for this type of study has doubled basically since last year. Because they're just asking for a lot more things, and for them to make a decision on justification.
So Barry, I had Steph share that in the interest of your question about, you know, from a timing perspective, you know, we could start in January or you know, let's say February with this study and not get to June or July with a determination from FAA that then could affect what we do or don't submit. So, you know, my crystal ball is pretty cloudy, unfortunately, of telling you what's the best path forward. You know, we know that this justification is going to happen no matter what. Whenever the time is right, it's going to happen before you can be considered for any sort of funding. So it's a necessary step. The question becomes, is it something that we want to try to get done so that we can submit for the ATP grant, assuming that that's going to move forward in, you know, next July, and we're then in a more competitive situation, or do we say the timing isn't right? Because if the ATP grant does not come to fruition, you know, is the county then able to proceed with this sort of a project? I'm going to say within the next 4 to 5 years, because if we've got to look at other sources, it might take us that long to bring those dollars together.
And then I'm also going to ask the following, because this ultimately will be a fairly expensive project. $800 a square foot type ballparks of things. It doesn't take much to add up quickly. We currently, in our AIP or ACIP, have a taxiway reconstruct and all sorts of things tied to that, that's, I'll say, on the order of $10 million, which is scheduled out, I think, 3 years from now-ish. Are we trying to bite off more than we can chew? Or will we then be saying, well, do we deal with crumbling pavements or this terminal to realistically make the terminal project happen in a time frame that is somewhat reasonable? Again, assuming that we are unsuccessful with ATP this coming year. Did I lose you, Stephanie?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
I
we're,
can.
yeah, we're here.
Sorry, everything just went black on my end. I heard you asking a question, Barry, but I didn't hear all of it.
Okay, so because we have on our ACIP a roughly, I'll say by the time it's all done, possibly $10 million taxiway reconstruct, apron reconfigure, connecting taxiway reconfigure, all sorts of stuff there. In the near-ish timeframe that we clearly won't have entitlement funds for, so that's gonna have to come from the larger pool.
Right.
If we are not successful with ATP funding this coming year, or that program isn't funded, or we just don't rank well, then we've got two large, expensive projects now competing against each other here, let alone competing then statewide and regionally for funding. Is that asking too much to be realistic?
Short answer is more than likely. MDOT is probably going to be hard pressed to put forth two projects for discretionary funding. The area where you might compete better would be possibly congressionally directed spending, or what we used to call earmarks. If those are allowed to continue, again, with the new administration, we don't know if that's going to be something that'll be possible. MDOT is certainly going to want you to put your money towards your runway projects and your taxiway projects ahead of a terminal building. The challenging part being, with the constrained space that you have, do you jeopardize losing passengers from your regional jet service because we don't have enough hold room for them? That's a tenuous balance there in and of itself. So, but to your point, those two projects competing against each other, the pavement infrastructure is 90% of the time going to win out. Or take priority, I guess I should say.
In the way I see this potentially unfolding is if we're unsuccessful with ATP, then the next window of opportunity of actually getting discretionary funding for the terminal is probably 7 or 8 years from now. And then I'm concerned about us having funded this study, and will that be eligible for reimbursement that far down the road? And even if it is, which then ties back to how confident you are with our justification. There's so much unknown right now. This is hard. And again, I'm asking questions. You and I have talked about some of this before, but again, this is ultimately the board's decision, and they need to understand all of these conflicting things that come into success or less than success. And it's not that I don't think we will get some reimbursement for that $80,000, but if it's 8 years from now, that's a different thought process around funds being reimbursed than it's, we're, doing it for 6 months type thing.
Right. And I would love to offer you some sort of smaller study that, gives you the ability to tip your toe in the water enough that we could submit for an ATP grant and see what happens. But unfortunately, FA is not of that mindset. We've recently tried that with Houghton County and have now been chasing it for almost a solid 9 months plus additional costs, and gotten us to where we are. That's why you see the $80,000 number, as Stephanie explained. So unfortunately, there's not a quick version of this for us to get that question answered. It's kind of all in or all out if we're going to go down this road.
Wasn't there a driver for us to even begin discussing the terminal aspect, because the runway and the taxiway were higher on the list?
It was this ATP one-time funding opportunity and getting contour and regional jet service. So I mean, it's those factors that are here that push us down this potential path.
Well, the TSA requirements alone now, as opposed to when this building was built. I mean, I remember, you know, several of us in this room remember the building that this one replaced, and you flew out, a little airplane. The security was somebody with a wand going around you, and then you couldn't leave until they brought the dog over from the sheriff's department to sniff all the luggage. So, you know, we went from that to this. But then it seems like every meeting or so, we're hearing something from TSA.
Well, their
Well, we need
requirements
this,
evolve
yeah,
and change based on who their management is and what their budget is. I mean,
Let's see, where I'm going with that is where that would put us in the pecking order for improvements. I mean, these are, I guess we get into the government thing, but the FAA, TSA is telling us, we want this, this, and this. Well, here's the square footage that we have, and it was based on, you know, what we thought we needed 15, 16, 17 years ago. Does that have any bearing on this? I mean, are we in worse shape as far as square footage than some of the other airports that are in line for the same grant? I guess that might be another crystal ball question, but.
well, so I'm gonna put Mead and Hunt on the, so you said you've got 4 other Mead and Hunt clients in Michigan. Your gut feeling as to where we would rank amongst those 4, I kind of want to put you on the line and kind of get that answer.
Well, I can be completely transparent. One of them is Oscoda, Wordsmith. So they are looking at just a traditional general aviation airport terminal building, raise it and build brand new. And they have gone through their justification study, and it's working its way through approval right now. Houghton is looking at terminal expansion to address the same issues that you have, that, you know, they were built and designed pre-TSA, pre-security needs, and pre-regional jet. They are, we are in the study phase with them right now, hoping to get an approval here, God willing, in January. Escanaba was matching you guys in terms of needing to move forward with getting a study done, and for the same reasons, needing to accommodate pre-TSA issues and regional jet service. With their change in management and the issues going on there, I don't know that they're going to be in any position to try to move forward, because there's nobody at the moment going to be driving that train. And then, you know, so they're running same thing with you. So the 4 here in Michigan,
That was 3.
yeah, well, sorry,
We're the
3 plus
4th.
you. You're the 4th. Yep. So, you know, Oscoda's ahead of you slightly in that we've got the study done, but it's not approved. But it's strictly a GA airport. Houghton is slightly ahead of you in that they've got their justification developed, but it's not approved yet. And it's trying to accommodate 139 improvements. And then you and Escanaba. So, you know, I would put you, you know, I would think if I'm channeling my FAA, which always scares me when I pretend to do that, you know, I would think that the 3 of you that are commercial service airports, I would elevate higher than Oscoda, because we're trying to, you know, keep that air service, meet needs that are, you know, are included with TSA and that level of service. And for all practical purposes, you're all generally in the same spot, or would be by that July deadline if you move forward with a study. The other option is you could not move forward with a study. I mean, if we could do some, I don't want to say back of the napkin, but we certainly could do some general estimating of the what that could be submitted for an application and see what happens. The downside with that is the dollar amount that you submit for, if you're successful, is the dollar amount you get. So, you know, there would be, you know, let's say we came back with a number of $4 million is what it's going to cost us. Well, if that's what we submit and they say, great, you know, Manistee Blacker, you're going to get a $4 million grant, and then we actually get into the justification and we get into the design and find out, geez, it's a $6 million project and, only 3/4 of it is eligible, then we're in a situation where we've got a shortfall that has to be accommodated. So, not that we couldn't figure out ways to accommodate that shortfall, but that's kind of the concern that we would have of, we would have to make our best guess and be prepared to live with that should we be successful in winning it and then, do our design. The other side is, you could go through that process and, reverse engineer it based upon the amount of dollars that you get. If you successfully achieve the grant.
Did I hear you think that there's nobody at Escanaba to fill in their application? So out of the 4, there would only be 2 EAS airports, Houghton for their terminal expansion and Manistee. Did I understand that correctly? Escanaba's out of a airport manager and won't push the papers?
Well, I just don't know if they're bored where they're at right now. Stephanie, do you have a better feel on that? I guess I'm leaning towards I don't know that we'll end up being successful in getting that moving.
I just think, historically, I've gone through transitions with our airport managers before. During those transition times, things tend to take a long, long time to get through, get approved, get reviewed. I mean, we could push as hard as we can, but at the end of the day, if you don't have a signature on something, there's not much you can do to move forward. I think it's possible, but I also have serious doubts about it. And because I think they're going to be very skeptical of fronting any money or anything like that because there is no one, driving the bus, if you will.
So when it's distilled, I hear a 2-way tie between Manistee and Houghton and Oscoda 3 because they're general aviation. Is that a bottom line
But, I
of
mean,
your
that's just
assessment?
Yeah, there's
one
crystal
company,
ball.
Michigan.
We
this
get it.
is a
I'm just trying to
national-
make sure I'm hearing right.
Yeah. Now,
Well,
having said that, that doesn't preclude other airports. No, those are the 3 that I'm aware of because they're Mead and Hunt clients. There's nothing to say that any of the other, 96, or it's a total of 96 NIPIAS eligible airports in the state of Michigan aren't also submitting. Detroit Metro submits routinely. Grand Rapids is going to, there's going to be plenty of competition just from the state of other airports in the state of Michigan, let alone, there's 3,300 airports that are eligible to submit for this nationwide.
And what percentage of your clients are having this discussion?
Gosh, probably at least a quarter or better.
Well, it's just a fact of life. I mean, the rest of there's competition every day we wake up. Everybody's pursuing their own interest, as they should.
Well, the only catch on this one is the length of time possibly to get reimbursed. We've got transition costs that are going to probably be coming at our doorstep, along with the, taxiway. That is more meat and potatoes than this, a touch more meat and potato, I would say, than this.
I don't know if they were looking for action today, but it seems that maybe a committee meeting that looks at all these cash demands and then internally prioritize for our airport, which cash to rise to the top.
That'd be something to look at in the January meeting, in the organizational meeting in January. Yeah, we can certainly look at that.
What do you think of that, Barry?
No, as much as I want this to move forward, because I want to do everything possible to make sure that Contour is successful, and this is a piece of that, the challenges and the things that are going to occur in the next 2 to 3 years for completely other things, this is hard to squeeze in. If I was hearing strong confidence that we are likely, based on our needs to receive funding, that would be a no-brainer. It just, I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But if we don't do anything, well, then we know nothing is going to improve in that area, so.
Other than seating capacity, so I went out there to look, I think there's 22 seats. We have a 30-passenger jet, we're 8 seats short. Are there any other deficiencies with this place where we're in, default or we're trying to
So
cure with the terminal
general,
expansion?
the general issues are seating, post-security. We have no baggage process for collecting your bags, and that becomes more of an issue when you've got fuller planes. You've got 30 bags, where do they go? Where do people go pick them up? How is that handled? And then just in general, TSA constraints.
Okay.
TSA has said for at least a decade now, they are going to standardize all airports on their security process, so they're the same in every airport, and what we are lacking is that full body scanner. We don't have room for it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and with TSA, it is unfunded obligations that they impose, saying, you've got to figure out where this is gonna go, we're gonna require that this happens, and if you don't, but then we have the challenge. So those are the general things, all related to air service.
Thank you.
Would you all, I mean, here's a thought. Would you be opposed to going after the MDOT Air Service grant to do the study? If they fund it, we move forward, and if they don't, we don't. But that way, if they would pay for it, even if we couldn't make the bill deadline, or some of the ATP deadlines, you still have that piece of justification in your hand should other funding come available.
And it not be out
That
of
seems like
pocket.
something we should
Correct.
do.
Well, if that were the only thing we were trying to apply for, I would 100% agree. But later, I'm gonna tell the board about discussions I'm having with Muskegon about an alternative application for that program that plays into this as well. And I don't know if we could get both. It certainly wouldn't hurt to apply for both, but we'll,
Yeah.
but that's not this topic, so,
Yeah.
but yet it
Yeah.
plays into answering your question.
Yeah. Any other questions? George, anything? Alyssa? Cindy? Anything?
So, I guess Mead and Hunt, what next steps do you need from us, and in what time frame to happen? So that we can figure out if this can move forward, if it can't. This has been helpful, I think, for the board to have this discussion. I think we're at the end of it being productive. I just want to kind of get a couple more next steps as to how we can move this forward or kill it if that is ultimately where it goes.
I mean, I guess from our perspective, we've got a draft scope of services developed based upon our continual refinement with the Detroit ADO as far as what they've been looking at the other sites. So we could get that in your hands just so you have the sample of what we believe FAA is going to require us to do when the time comes, if you will. And we could use that scope of work and prepare an application, again, based upon your upcoming conversation with the other application, if we wanted plan to submit to and see what happens with FAA, or excuse me, MDOT, if they were to select that as something to pursue. And then we could go from there. You know, at this point, you know, we don't want to spend your money if it's not something that in a timely manner we know we can come to fruition with, because it's dollars that you need to put elsewhere, either matching to the potential transition to the other coming runway project. So I think if we do those two things and get those into your hands, and if by the end of February, we get that decision from MDOT of if it's successful from their perspective or not, then we could make a decision of, are we pursuing it with any local funding to move forward or not?
Okay. I guess for what I've heard, we pick this up at the next regular meeting. I've heard a suggestion that maybe we should have a committee that dives deeper. What is the board's thought?
Well, it looks like we'll have a contract we can look at in January.
That
Isn't
would
that what
only be if we decide to move forward.
Right.
We're not gonna have a contract if we're not gonna do that
Well, I
project.
thought that was just, I guess I thought that was just a proposal, a detailed proposal that I was looking at up here. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, boy. You know, we're right at that transition time here for the board, and we generally have an organizational meeting that second week of January. And that seems like the time to be putting committees together for next year. That's my thought about this. We could have a meeting. Right now, I'm booked through the new year, and that first week or so thereafter, I can't really commit to yet. And I think a lot of people are in that same position. But we can also wind up with a committee that meets once, and then the whole committee is reorganized a week later. I would rather have a committee. If this becomes a committee, a regular committee, I'd rather have it be a committee that can stay together for a few weeks or a few months. That's just my thought, but that's just me.
It seems to me that, while we do have this January transitional meeting approaching, our fiscal year straddles our transitional. And, at most, we would only have 2 changes in members and, at least 1 change in members. So the budget issues, I mean, at least from my vantage point, really what is driving these issues are how do we fund any of this? And all of those questions are answered in our current budget that we are operating under, irrespective of the transition. And at least for me, it would be helpful to see all of the cash demands with respect to capital improvement projects, the runway, the terminal, whatever else there may be, kind of on one spreadsheet. And to me, those are just budget issues, not a special meet and hunt committee.
And to that end, I would recommend just bringing that to the full board at the next meeting.
Well,
I guess if we're gonna talk about funding, Jeff said earlier, this isn't something that's within our budget. It would need to go to the county. I think this is maybe a Jeff, Karen, and Lisa conversation. And if they come back and say, the funding won't be there, that answers, that makes it an easy decision.
Yeah.
Now, it may not be that black and white, and they may want to know more, but I think they've heard enough. Karen just had to leave, but she was on for the whole conversation. I think that maybe is something that can happen over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
And that by the time we do reconvene this board, we may know whether that's even conceivable at this point, in which case, then.
Right.
and what was the downside to Mead and Hunt's option of apply for the feasibility study of the terminal, and if you get it, then you pay, and if you don't, then you don't, if I heard that correctly? There was
The timing of that potentially means we'll not have as good of a study, because start till May, and these deadlines are summer, so.
Well, the flip side, the study is only a piece of it. It's the $80,000 cost of putting it into that. And if you don't see a reimbursement, it could be years out to receive it, is what I heard.
Yes.
That's the problem you get into. It's not a matter of, applying and then see where it drops on the funding and where we compete against everybody else. It's the unknown and putting the $80,000 out there and waiting to see when's it gonna come back when we got other things going on as well.
And is the 80,000 an eligible reimbursement for the forthcoming 696?
No,
Okay.
it has to be tied to the project moving forward.
That's why they wanted you to get the skin in the game.
Yep, that's it.
So any committee that gets formed on this, Lisa and Susan definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any kind of rough idea of what this building could cost besides the 800,000, or that's what the study is?
No,
$800 a
Or
square foot.
$800 a square foot, but the total cost of the whole project? No idea
We
whatsoever.
don't.
How many square
What
feet,
we're talking.
that sort of thing, yeah.
Nothing
That's-
whatsoever to go on.
Why the
Right.
study and why it is $80,000 is to get
That-
not just, we've got needs, it's this many
Right,
square
right,
feet,
right,
this
right.
is, you know, roughly
Yeah.
the estimated cost. As, Stephanie Green was saying, the study isn't supposed to be preliminary design, but they're now wanting that level of information so that they can then better make sure that dollars get
Yep.
allocated
Yep.
to projects that are most worthy.
Yep. Right. Anyone else?
Meeting Hunt, is there anything else? I mean, I'm assuming you didn't have other slides to talk to?
Did we lose them again?
You might be on mute.
Nope, can you hear me?
There we are,
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
Mhm.
Okay. Nope, that was the big thing. And then Barry, we would like to talk offline just to see about setting up with you, possibly bi-weekly check-ins as we move forward with the other two projects. So that's something you and I can talk about offline.
Yep, that sounds good.
All right, thank you so much, Stephanie. And,
You're welcome.
your whole crew, Stephanie, and who else was there?
Andrew.
And-
Got Luke and Andrew.
Luke and Andrew, I knew it was two biblical names. All right, thank you so much, and, let's move on with the, meeting here. You did receive the minutes from the, 18th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the minutes from the, special meeting on the, 26th, motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the minutes?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Real quick, just a couple of comments from me. Just my yearly thank you to everyone for all the help and support all around. It's been a wild ride, and it's been a lot of fun, though. I learned something every time I walk into this building, all the time I've spent with Barry, offline, if you will. But we've had just hours and hours long discussions in this building over the last year, and just amazing how much goes into this. Thank you, everyone. Special thank you, Alyssa, who will be moving on to other boards around the region, and we look forward to seeing your name on some projects forthcoming, and maybe I can come and be a public commenter at one of your meetings.
Yeah,
But,
thank you, everyone.
But really, that, and I bounced ideas off of her back and forth. You read financial reports like people read novels. And that is so nice to have someone sitting there and just go zip through these things and just go right to the meat of the matter. So that's been huge. So thank you so much.
Thank my parents for that.
Good. Well, send my thanks on to them. And, to the board itself, this is a group of community volunteers, and we rely on people who are busy. And, kind of to that end, I want to make sure everyone understands that these meetings, we have to be a little bit mindful of one another in these meetings and how much time we spend talking about one thing. And so just understand, I don't want to run off people with the wealth of backgrounds we have in this room. I mean, I look around here and literally about everything we need is sitting here right now. And so, you know, be kind, think about how much time you might be taking up in a meeting, and just keep that in mind as you make your comments, as I'm keeping that in mind right now. Jeff, want to let you know that I'm not blowing off the meeting tomorrow morning. Normally, I would go there, but Contour only has one flight tomorrow. Had there been 2 flights, I would have been on the afternoon flight, but please tell Karen, I'm sorry, Karen's gone, but thank you to you and Karen both. I learned a ton, you know, just in some of the text back and forth and in person. So thank you very much, everyone. And with that, let's move on. Treasurer's report.
Those were sent out this morning. Just need you to approve the accounts payable, but I would like to make one change to that. So the corporate flight management, that $690,000, is actually the October payment. I would like to also add the November payment.
And that is,
Yeah, I see that amount.
let me get it up on the screen. So the October invoice is $554,000.
November would be
Sorry,
November.
November, $554,288.
Can you tell me that again?
554,288.
Okay. So, I'll update that, and then that'll be added, and I'll give that to Lindsay. So you'll be approving the October and the November one. The November one will not be paid out until we've gotten reimbursement from the October one, which we are currently waiting for.
The latest update I had from DOT was Wednesday.
Why so long? Why is the reimbursement process taking so long?
It's the first one, so getting the account set up so they could actually log in and submit it took a while. And then what documentation they required us to submit involved a couple days of back and forth as to what it was. But now it's been sitting 3 weeks, and that I don't know.
I mean, I think it's gonna be important for us to follow up and get those answers why it's sitting there, because, I mean, that's a lot,
Yes.
a lot of money coming from us. So
Yep.
I would appreciate knowing, you know, that the next process or the next time we submit is going to be a much quicker turnaround than, I get the whole first time and the different things that they, need, but sitting there for 3 weeks after we've complied with their request is a little.
So approving this on our end does not release it.
Nope.
Okay.
Because according to the contract, it states
Yes,
that we don't have to
yes.
pay that until
Okay.
the other one's been paid. At least that way, once it happens, I'll have the authorization to turn around and pay that, the next day.
So we would need a motion on this to amend this, to include,
Yeah, just to include the November.
for the, accounts payable.
Yep.
I will make that motion as amended.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, and that's going to take a roll call.
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Lasky? Yes. Mr. Jeff Dot?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Adam Dot?
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky? Yes.
Now, that's just the amendment, that's not the report.
No, that's for the whole amount.
That did the whole thing, okay.
Yep, approve them with that.
Okay, so now we're moving on to 481.
There was nothing in that account. It got paid out. We don't have anything to do with that.
Okay.
So we have the revenue and expenditures. So the one thing that I did do on this, just to kind of give you a clearer picture, because, you know, those fees that were paid out kind of make it a little wonky there. But at the very bottom, I did a net revenue, less the air service, so you can kind of really truly see where the airport's at. That very bottom line does not include the contour payment. That way you can kind of see where you're at. Now, my other question was for Barry. The contour monthly payment, I've never had to bill. Prior company that we had always sent payment. So is that the same process?
No, they're, let's get together, I've got
Okay.
where to send that to.
Okay, 'cause I don't have any of that, or like the contract signed, or I need that information because now I need to bill them for then October and November. So that was my only question on that one, because really, if you would have received payment for that, that would not be a negative dollar amount in either of the monthly or the year-to-date amounts. So. And then on the trial balance, that was weird with the negative cash amount, but that's because of that $690,000 payment that was paid, that we haven't been reimbursed yet back. So going forward, I think I'm gonna separate that out, just so you can kind of see where that's at on the trial balance for you too. Anybody have any questions on any of that?
Do you have a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve the report.
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Lasky? Yes. Mr. Jeff Dowd?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Adam Dowd?
Yes.
Ms. Steve? Yes.
All right, for the committees, the most active committee we've had recently is the Transition Committee. If you guys want to talk about the meeting we had this morning, it was pretty much just, they've started this study. Anybody wants to ask about that, I can answer questions, but,
Meet and hunt.
yeah, meet and hunt, it's 4 airports, that they're looking at. And we're getting a copy of the actual survey emailed to the committee. Might be in there right now, I don't know, but it is, okay. So, it's pretty much what you would expect, though. Questions about the operation, we'll get that, we'll have that as soon as they get them back from the people.
There is a committee that's not on the list that has also met this.
Yeah, and
That's the car rental committee.
Yeah, and I saw that, I put that under old business down here, or new
Okay.
business, but we can talk about that right now, because it's right in line with all that anyway, so you guys want to take that?
We met with, is it Greg from
Victorian Auto, Greg.
Victorian Auto, and then, Corey, or Cody.
Cody
Mhm.
Watson.
Cody from Watts, and Greg pretty much wants out of it, but he's willing to stick with it. It's through the year 2025. But anytime, we'd like to give him a month's notice before the first, due to his, insurance, requirements for the cars. He'd rather do that. And then Cody is interested, but there's some issues he has to deal with the dealership, and insurance is a big one. He has cars plenty available as needed, and then, Stellantis has a program that they can get as many cars as they need. He leases some cars and rents some cars now. So we kind of gave him a time frame to when we can get going, and, then we threw out the idea about the Enterprise, or a major brand in here, or 2 or 3 or whatever we could potentially get, and, he's gonna come back. We're gonna have another meeting the 13th, the morning of our next regular meeting. See what he can come up with for us. And then decide, do we wanna reach out to, national brands before then, or after we find out from him what's going on? Pretty much that's-
Didn't Enterprise contact us to,
They did, I had a meeting with them, and then they went silent after that meeting.
is there any correlation between our Enterprise operation and that Enterprise operation?
I don't know.
What's
Do you
yours?
remember who you talked to?
The sheriff's
No.
office, all the sheriff's
Yeah.
Well,
office vehicles go through
our
Enterprise.
sheriff's department
Mhm.
receives vehicles, and we also are looking at one or two for the
I'm going
courthouse.
to assume it's gonna be separate, 'cause here you're talking rental.
Those are
What
we're
we do
leased.
is we lease, so I'm assuming, but, I mean, it probably wouldn't hurt for us to, say something to our salesperson, hey, you know,
Yeah.
we started a conversation, went silent, you know, what can you do for us?
I'll get you the
Okay.
contact.
Hertz is involved with Lynx, and then it's Enterprise with,
Gerber?
they are in the area, but not a lot of interest.
Do you wanna follow up in a separate email, Barry, or do you want me just to pass this around, the little spreadsheet that I made just for the board?
Whatever you prefer.
You can just hand it around, and I can email it to you, but basically what I did is I looked at all the EAS airports, 10 EAS airports in Michigan, and, I ranked them in two ways, one by county population and two by enplanements, and I found that only, Manistee and Ironwood don't have national car rental, access. So Enterprise and, Avis seem to be, at all the other 8 EAS airports.
And the off-site ones, how do they get the cars?
I just did that through
Sure.
online
Okay,
data. I
gotcha,
hadn't,
gotcha.
reached out, yeah. So, I think what I took away from that is we shouldn't be deterred that we're a small community. We should be able to scale up just like all the other small communities have.
Well, I think it's just a matter of showing these guys that they can make money. If you show somebody they can make money, they're gonna come come out of the woodwork.
I mean, if they're already in the area, you would think the ad wouldn't, but I'm not in that business, so.
One of the next steps for that committee was if we reach out to one of our peer airports, get sample contracts of what they have in place that is enabling those agreements to work. So we've got comparable information.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Anything else? All right, Barry, you're up.
Okay.
Well, I guess really new business, 'cause you and I talked about, I know what you're talking about here, but I wanna let you,
Oh, okay.
be under new business, the
Right.
state grant.
So, you already know about the state grant because Stephanie has, mentioned it in her conversation as a possible funding source for, this terminal study. So, the state legislature has done 2 special allocations of funding from their ARPA allotments. Last year, they awarded $5 million for air service development for commercial air service airports in the state of Michigan. Last year, when that process rolled out, initially, the Central Air Service airports were told they couldn't apply because they're already getting funding, and that this was really more for the non-essential air service airports. At the last minute, someone must have complained to the right person. They did open it up to EAS airports. That was when we were starting our EAS selection process in the spring, and I didn't even know what we would be asking for that would make sense and be competitive. Well, last year, every non-EAS airport got, I think, $700,000 of this $5 million, and 2 EAS airports each got $250,000. So I've dug in and talked with Houghton and Sault Ste. Marie were the 2 that were awarded projects last year. Sault Ste. Marie's project was for a test of seasonal service from Sault Ste. Marie to Chicago. They're a SkyWest EAS airport that has service to Detroit. They were trying to see what the temperature was for a different hub airport. They contracted with Boutique for that service last summer. I have not gotten follow-up information as to how that went or, you know, how Boutique performed, et cetera, but that's what their project was, and that was funded. Houghton's project is for a third flight, so EAS is 2 flights a day. They're using their $250,000 for SkyWest to do a third flight a day during their peak summer travel time. They are gonna do that this coming summer, so they haven't yet expended those funds. So that was last year's program. This year's program is being funded at $2 million instead of $5 million, so plus money. But I think they're looking at creative proposals to effectively spend this these dollar amounts on. I'm not sure that the types of projects they funded last year ultimately were a good use of those dollars. Obviously, that's for them to determine. So the feedback I'm getting through Stephanie Ward is that in her conversation, they're looking at a broader selection of proposals to consider this year. Suggestion that air service, you need a terminal to provide air service, maybe that makes sense. What I have started a conversation with Muskegon on is an idea of introducing cross-lake service between our 2 airports and airports in Wisconsin. Basically a routing that would connect Milwaukee to Muskegon to Manistee to Green Bay, so that you could, from Manistee, one stop to Milwaukee, or nonstop to Green Bay. In Muskegon, you could nonstop to Milwaukee or one stop to Green Bay. And seeing if there is sufficient demand, because there's no competition. It's a large body of water that the only alternative is driving many hours around. In the summer, there's enough business to sustain 2 ferries running across every day at rates that aren't necessarily inexpensive. Historically, prior to the downfall of Frontier, Muskegon and Grand Rapids had daily flights to Milwaukee through roughly 2011. So I've got historic data that says there's roughly 30 passengers a day that use that route then. There's never been northern Michigan to northern Wisconsin service, so right now the average is 4 to 6 passengers a day that fly from Traverse City over to Green Bay or Appleton, in that region. It's fairly expensive to do that. So the idea that Muskegon and I are talking about is to put together a joint proposal, because we think that would check off some extra check boxes in their decision process for a service that hasn't used to exist in the southern part of the state, hasn't existed for 10 years, and potentially is viable unsubsidized. So, and it would, you know, I think give us interesting additional options on top of our bread and butter Chicago air service. But we routinely hear people say that, oh, if you only flew to Milwaukee again, those types of comments. So that's the idea. So I'm mentioning that to the board, is that I would like to put together a grant proposal and kind of work through with Muskegon on doing something like this. Probably reaching out to Cape Air, Boutique, Contour, and Denver Air Connection, and just say, would anybody be interested in partnering on running a route like this for a season with subsidy to mitigate any potential risk? And I think it logically only works with a smaller airplane, just given the more limited numbers of passengers. filling a 50 or larger seat jet on a daily basis here to Green Bay probably isn't, you know, something that's viable. But 9 seats, probably, I think it could be, but we don't know unless we would try something like that. So that is what I'm thinking. Again, I've had this conversation with Muskegon, talked with Mike, I've talked with Mead and Hunt about this. Muskegon was going to talk with their board about it last Thursday when they had their board meeting. I haven't heard from Ken on Friday how that went. But now in light of this other potential application under this program, does it make sense for us to submit 2? Does it only submit 1? If we did submit 2, how would we rank them in as far as priority goes? These grant applications need to be in the February 7th, so there is still time, but that's what that is about, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention and either get your blessing or say it's not worth our time to contemplate.
I have one question.
Yes.
I'm allowed to ask questions. So when she alluded earlier about the grant availability to pay for the $80,000, and you said there was something later you wanted to talk to about Muskegon, is that what that is?
Yes.
So it's either we apply for the $80,000 that would cover that, or this, because you don't think they would pay for both?
I don't know. When have grant programs, understanding how they really score things versus what they say they score them on, and realistically in these proposal, they're not even providing guidance as to how they're gonna score it, just says, give us creative proposals and we'll figure it out. Is having multiple a good thing or not? I don't know.
Right. So financially speaking, if we were to do that and got the grant, how would that financially improve the airport here? Like, what extra revenue would that bring in for the airport?
It probably would be minimal revenue, short term, landing fees, fuel, probably, possibly. Potentially, depending on if we wanted them to impose passenger facility charge fees, we could get the $4.50 per passenger. Thing.
At 9 passengers?
To me, it is about trying something a little bit outside the box to see if there is potential for other air service that is not EAS.
Right.
And just see if there's.
And then how would that be funded after the first year? Because it's a pilot program, right?
Correct.
For 1 year that would be funded?
The goal would be to see if it is profitable enough that it can be self-sustaining.
Okay.
So using the grant to basically see if there is demand, and probably realistically having lower fares to attract demand and see if it can work. But longer term, it would be to have something that is ongoing and self-sustaining.
With limited hours in the day and with everything on your plate, it seems to me as though we may get more return from an investment in grant writing to expand the terminal than a half-full plane of 4 or 5 people and some landing. I just think there's more upside on focusing limited hours in the day to all the capital demands of this facility, opposed to the limited passenger demand of the route across the pond.
Well, more people coming in though is gonna kind of fuel that demand too, whether it's 2, 5, 10, 100.
But then you're also
Yeah.
adding then more passengers to the day for a terminal that can handle the 30 that are coming in.
But they're not.
Well, that could be
Different.
around,
That
yeah.
actually,
Yeah,
we actually can handle 9 passengers at a time, no problem, so.
yeah. The rental car that would be a good rental car selling
It
point.
potentially,
So those into the
Yeah,
and it ultimately makes the justification for the terminal
That's what I was
potentially
getting
a
at.
stronger story.
what about
We've
the,
got more business that we're
now, the check-in over here, we have a room for one airline in our check-in. Yeah.
have to sort out.
Yeah, that'd be a detail. So what would be the timing of this? First of all, you said seasonal.
Right.
Is that a shoulder season sort of thing, or just summer, or
It was
year-round? or-
just, given some very off-the-cuff financial things I've thrown out there, it would probably be around 10 weeks of our peak summer.
Gotcha.
So end of
Okay.
June through
Okay.
I could see where going to Minnie or Detroit might get some traction. To Green Bay or Milwaukee, I just can't even wrap my head around that concept, but that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
My sense is there's just a ton on our plate at the airport for a 10-week deal, and the amount of time and effort it takes to write a grant. I don't know. With the limited information and the limited discussion that we've had here at this table, tough for me to see a robust return commensurate with the time and energy it takes to we have to jump through all the same hoops to write that grant as an $80,000 grant for a terminal, I would assume, no? Boxes to check?
This grant program, it's one of those types of grant programs that you just need to submit a one-pager. It's not a lot of work, not a formal program. It's something that MDOT has thrown together and basically says, give us some proposals.
And to Jeff's point, you know, I was thinking the same thing when we were talking about this, Detroit. But I also see a distance, and those little planes, it'd take a long time to get to Detroit.
Yeah, it becomes, what makes this potentially financially viable is
Yeah.
short distances
Yeah.
where the alternative is driving many hours.
Mhm.
So you're not competing against a car, and you can keep costs relatively low because it's a short hop.
I know the ride well.
Yeah.
We all do.
Yeah, we all do that. Well, the Frontier days, of course, that was our only choice, so we went to Milwaukee, and then we caught a jet to parts unknown from there. And I don't know how much of a hub Milwaukee is anymore.
This wouldn't be about hubbing, this would be
Right.
about the local demand.
Yeah.
And that's why I said, I've researched back, and in that era, there were 30 passengers a day
Mm-hmm.
that were just connecting across the lake. And it was interesting, talking with Stephanie Ward, she said, I used to fly that flight because their headquarters is in Madison.
Yeah.
So she'd hop over to Milwaukee and then drive over to Madison from there.
Mm-hmm.
Now she goes to Detroit, she drives an hour the other way to then
Mhm.
fly over to Madison.
So you're looking for a motion from the board to,
Doesn't have to be a motion, just
mhm.
give you direction that I may or may not proceed. It would be bringing something to you next
Mhm.
month, to approve as the application at that time.
Is there a match or anything, or they're gonna fund?
It's what we asked for, so I would say there is no, I wouldn't ask for a match, knowing where we are financially.
Mhm.
So the board you know, you have no financial tie to it, you know, and even if they apply for it and get it, you as the board still have the option to say, meh, I don't think we do it, or we do it, and
Yeah.
if it's one page and you're working cooperatively with someone else, it's
And we're working,
a huge time consumption of it.
and we have Muskegon along with us on this project. And, depending on what they came up with in their meeting yesterday, I guess. I'm okay with looking at it. I don't know about my, my understanding of the the market in Milwaukee and Green Bay, but I don't see a problem with looking at it. And right now, we are below,
I was just gonna say,
quorum.
we just lost a quorum,
Yeah.
so.
so we can't make a big decision on anything anyway at this point. At this point, we're a committee.
Me personally, I think it's a great idea.
I think it's worth looking at, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
So this, just so I'm clear, is this in competition with funds that we could utilize for terminal, or is this separate?
It is separate. We can put, I think one end of that is we're ending up submitting 2 proposals into this program, and we would have to rank them as to which one we wanted them to consider first. Or we could do one or both, depending on if we think we want to move forward with the terminal program once county contingent fees.
So if we were to ask for funding at this for the terminal, would that nullify the need for the county to cough up $80,000 to get the study done with Stephanie, to apply for the full funding to actually make it happen?
Yes, but if we wait, but then we have to wait to start the study, and as
We missed the
said,
window.
it will be a lower quality study, because it can't start until May per the current guidelines on use of these funds.
So what happens if we did that, and the county pre-funded the $80,000, would you still be able to get the $80,000 back for the grant, or do you have to wait until you actually have it before you can?
The way Stephanie was talking is that it would not be eligible for funding if it had been expended.
Okay.
So pre-funding it wouldn't help.
You would, she indicated you would have to ask what the pre-funding is like. And
Right.
I can tell you, federal,
Mhm.
to go through the process of requesting pre-funding federally is a nightmare. Like, we are going through it with the railroad grant that we received, and, I mean, it was months and months and months and months and months. And finally, after we've switched fiscal years, oh, now you can do it. I mean, so it is not easy to ask for that. And as she talked, it's reimbursable, so you're not even gonna get it back until you do
The project.
the project or do something that they deem you can get reimbursed for it, so,
Okay, we have a quorum.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, we're back in business now.
Well, I'm going to take that there's maybe a slight consensus that I can continue. I'll bring something more concrete back, next month, and then decide which both, how we submit under this program.
Okay, perfect.
Now I think we're up to my report.
Yeah.
No airport accidents or incidents, hangars, so sheriff's boat, was there a follow-up on that?
so we have had, or I had conversations with them. They have someone who is working with them to kind of get a blueprint, to see what it's gonna cost for us to build. There was a conversation the other day of possible another location to temporarily store, so I think they were gonna look into that. So we are trying to get it out as soon as possible.
Okay. So the board asked me to talk to Ludington and Cadillac to find out what their hangar rates and that situation was. So Ludington, so our T hangars are currently $175 a month and $225 a month, depending on which Ludington is more expensive. They are at $266 a month, and they have an 8-person waiting list for their hangars. Why they can jack the price up. Cadillac hangars are less expensive than ours. They are running at $150 and $190, and their T hangars are full. So they also have a community hangar, which is basically where you just squeeze a lot of planes into one hangar, and that is a less expensive option, and that's currently they're renting that at $105 a month. And then larger hangars, so big box hangar, that would be comparable to our Cape Air former leased hangar. Cadillac's charging $1,000 a month. Our late rate for that is, I think, around $1,150 a month. So we're in the ballpark on that, a little bit higher than Cadillac. And then kind of smaller in between small T hangar and a larger hangar, the range is $310 to $605 a month. So we are more expensive than Cadillac for our hangars and less expensive than Ludington. And Ludington really is where people want to be because they've got the longest waiting list. So that's just.
Maybe we need to email their waiting list people, tell them we got some room over here.
Well, we don't have any room right now because we now have a waiting list too, which is why.
That's why they wanna kick us out.
So, but that's an update on that.
Okay.
The approved snowplow repairs that the board approved last month are supposed to be completed tomorrow or Wednesday. So we, by the end of the week, should be back up to 100% capability. Managed well enough through our early winter that we've gone through the last couple weeks, but it'll be nice to have that vehicle functioning 100%.
Barry, is that a stack of your reports sitting there? Thank you.
Oh, and I'm not even sharing it on the screen, which makes it even worse. Let me correct some of those things.
Here, I'll send that down. You send another one over this way. I gave mine away. Thanks.
The GSA lease, which is the lease for the space with GSA, the latest issue that has popped up there is that when the previous lease was done, Russ Pomeroy, who was county treasurer at the time and airport treasurer, did the lease under Manistee County. So as they were processing and wrapping this up, they were saying, oh, but your SAM registration doesn't show the right thing. And we kept saying, no, our SAM registration is fine. And they tracked it down as that they were using the county's SAM registration, not the airport authority. So they said, oh, well, now we have to go back and redo everything for the right entity. Because earlier in the process, we needed to provide them deeds that the authority owns the property that is being leased, and now it doesn't exist in the name of the entity that they were trying to make the lease to. So they're working on it, but that's the latest issue there. On our passenger numbers, I have not yet gotten from Contour their November numbers, so I don't have an update on that formally. Informally, based on the numbers I track, I think they're gonna be up over Cape Air approximately the same as October, between 5 and 10%. October, it was a 9% increase. December will be significantly a higher increase. I'll actually get to that in a second. But on the performance side, Contour only canceled 4 flights in November. And so far in December, we may be a little bit higher than that, but it's their on-time performance. So 34% of their flights were delayed, and many of those delays are significant delays, like 4 or 5 hours. And so, and that has been this past week where everything that could have gone wrong for Contour, I think, did. They ended up still flying most of their flights, but there were 10-hour delays. Last night, for example, I think the last flight got in at 12:30 this morning, instead of 8:30. So they have had some struggles, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Airfares, not really much is different here from month to month. We're still more expensive than Traverse City and Grand Rapids, and a little bit less expensive than Muskegon. And when Cape Air was here, we were closer to Traverse City, and that is really, the difference there is really the lack of the code share with American. So American can't set the Manistee to X price. It's the combination of the interline fares, which ends up being slightly higher. You'll see if you look under the Manistee column, more than half of the fares this month, the low fare is on United, so that interline is showing up and providing decent fares. However, you still can't book us directly on United's site, so there's still some IT issues on United's side to make that fully complete. I'll talk about that a little more in a second as well. Capital projects, I think Dean Hunt gave a complete update on all of that, so I will just skip over that. So Contour update. So November performance was good from a cancellation standpoint. The delays are creeping up to a point that's not as good. November passengers, as I mentioned, they're still, people are flying out of here, even if there are occasionally some hiccups. In December, we should see about a 60% increase versus 2023, and that is solely because Cape Air did not have the capacity to handle our passenger load. December was when Cape Air would switch to their winter schedule. They only had 2 flights a day, so it was 16 seats capacity, and we are daily enplaning, Contour's 2 flights, more than 16 on most days. So we were capacity constrained, which is, as we went through that process last year, that was the message we were giving to Cape Air is we need more capacity. This is really showing it when we have the capacity, when they didn't, how the numbers significantly improved. December is proving challenging. So weather, we're definitely in a learning process between Contour's SOC, which is something operations center, our ops, and just communication around weather conditions and how we operate and how we are learning. So it's been a learning experience the last 2 weeks, but then last week, you throw on top of that, that aircraft out there has been sitting in a mechanical now since last Wednesday, and they've had 2 different maintenance crews out here. They're bringing another maintenance crew out here. They've now finally diagnosed what the issue is, and parts are being lined up. But they've had to then bring in other aircraft to pick up our routes as best they can, and that flights have happened whenever they happen, not at all according to schedule. And then you throw in a couple airport closures for icing and winter storms, and it's just been a very bad week. Oh, and then one night, their de-ice truck died. They had 2 airplanes here, and they couldn't get any of them out. So, they're actually they're throwing a lot of resources at problems. They've just had a lot of problems stack up in a very short period of time. So it's not that they're doing poorly, could be doing better. They've had, in my opinion, bad luck. Where I noticed some concerns, and I wish Adam were still here because he's experienced them, because he's one of our most frequent flyers right now, is how communication, customer service related communication with Contour isn't what we've come to expect from our airlines, especially on the Chicago end, where they're just ground handled by American. American has no clue what the status of a Contour flight is, and you get no information down there. So everyone that knows Manistee is calling my desk to find out what's going on, and that's not necessarily the right way that people should be getting their information. And late last week, there was a Facebook, I guess it was Friday, a Facebook posting out there that two people have already brought to my attention, with some fairly negative comments. A lot of them were actually not accurate, which is not surprising. But the things that did ring true to me were their comments that the environment that Contour gives is cold and sterile. They're not welcoming and open as Cape Air was and others have been before them. Having Devin, having a station manager who I really respect, even though he's young and he's got a lot of learning to do, I want to work with him on addressing these issues. But right now, they are a concern, and the community is noting some of those differences. United Interline, I already touched on that. It's still not available on UA.com, but the fares through the Interline are fixed now, and thus you see that they are providing reasonable fares. Contour hiring updates already were introduced to Devin. They're about 2/3 staffed with their intended hiring goals. At the end of this process, they will have more employees employed than Cape Air did. But really at this point, there's only one Cape Air holdover. That's on the maintenance side. They have not retained customer service side previous staff for a variety of reasons. Currently, their schedule is only published through the end of March. I communicated with Matt Chaffetz last week, and that extension, which should go through end of September, so they go 6 months at a time, should be coming out this week, so people can start booking summer. I did a little check last week, and as of a year ago at this time, we already had 212 bookings beyond March that we don't have right now because there is no schedule yet. Having said that, I've already mentioned that December, we're currently up 60%. Advanced bookings for January right now are up 46%. Advanced bookings for February are up 30%. March up 30%. So as we are in our off-peak season, at least the advanced numbers are very encouraging versus where we were with Cape Air. And then obviously after March, it's 0 versus a decent amount for Cape Air. At the request of Adam, and I confirmed with the board chair that we've invited Contour CEO Matt Chaffetz to join us via Zoom next meeting to kind of give us a status update. It'll be 3 months after they started service, and maybe, hopefully, the issues we're having right now will be addressed and we'll work through, but if not, we'll have an opportunity to address any concerns we have with him while he's giving us an update. On the marketing side, Right Side Design is still waiting for a satisfactory resolution to the vendor they're trying to use to do billboards on our hangar with a previous installation of billboards over in Cadillac. So until that is resolved and he's confident that they're gonna do a good job, those are on hold. Contour did their Cyber Monday fair sale. That performed well. We don't really have anything to compare it to, but there was a definite uptick that week in sales. Our digital campaigns are running, and we will be having another fair sale this coming weekend. It's something that we've done here in Manistee previously with previous carriers, our winter solstice fair sale. So if you, actually, I think I've added everybody on the board to our email list, so you will actually see this go out this Friday when it goes out. And that's all.
All right. Thanks, Barry. Any other comments? We have nobody waiting online. Okay. Authority member comments?
Well, there's nothing, Karen sent me a text with all this stuff that you pretty much covered, so there's no sense for me to reread it, I guess, and
Yeah.
put names to.
And I've already said our little glitch with it, I've already brought that up earlier, so I won't rehash that. Well, thank you, everyone. Good year, busy year, and appreciate all the support and the committee meetings, all that sort of thing. It's nice to have a group of people willing to do things like that. That's just terrific. And again, I'm sorry that I can't be, but you know, this is a job. I'm not going to I'm not going to the winter cotillion. Yeah, I have
Not all
to.
fun and games.
Yeah, I have to be at work tomorrow late, but there's only one flight. All right. Well, with that, we will adjourn at 2:02.